do what's called transference. And what is transference? Sigmund Freud studied in 1895 that the unconscious feelings that sometimes might develop within the therapeutic relationship, he actually started to establish them within a person or feeling, and he himself started to treat that person and started to feel him himself. And so we make connections sometimes, and that connection can start affecting us in a deep way, whether we have gone through the issue or we have felt them in some kind of way. And child abuse can start affecting us in a deep and very meaningful way. And because this is children, it can involve us and involve our families. It can involve the society. It can involve our community. And so this is a short disclaimer that what we're going to be talking about today is about children. So with that being said, just to let everybody know, it's a disclaimer. Children are involved. Child abuse is involved. Sexual abuse is involved. And so please understand who is here. I think I'm going to let you kind of give our first introduction, and then I'll give the second one. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. Okay, our first guest is Miss Lisa Council. Lisa Council is a survivor of domestic violence who shares her testimony of overcoming abuse and tragedy. Her story is shared in schools, churches, and conferences. Lisa is a co-author of the Amazon bestseller, I Am Her Story, From Pain to Purpose, 1. Testimonies of Strong Women, international bestseller, Restoration Speaks Loud, From Tragedy to Triumph, and Triumphant Overcomer. Lisa's story, I Am Linda's Voice, has aired on DC TV and featured in the 2017 DC Black Film Festival, winning first place in the category of Best Web Series. She has also been featured in the Purple Pearls magazine, I Overcame Project, Federal City Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc., My Sister's Keeper, Addressing Violence Against Women and Children. Lisa's greatest passion is empowering women and young girls, assuring them that they too can live a life free of bondage and be healed from all adversity, and to see themselves as God sees them, royalty, according to 1 Peter 2:9. Lisa is the daughter to Mr. and Mrs. James Fleet and the late Walter Council. Lisa is a proud mother and native Washingtonian. Lisa knows that it was in her darkness that God was preparing her for her destiny, relating to Psalms 46:5. So if you can give our first guest, Lisa Council, welcome. We thank you.
Welcome, Miss Lisa. How are you today?
Oh, thank you. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, both of you. I'm honored.
You're very welcome.
So our second guest that's here, her name is Chrissy Sykes. She's an award-winning singer and writer with a career in South Africa and Nashville, USA. Chrissy decided to put her songwriting skills in a practice by writing the My Body is My Body program. The program was developed in a conjunction with various departments of education and Department of Human Services in the United States of America. Chrissy released that she could only reach a small portion of children by presenting the live show, so she decided to animate the program so that it could be shared on the internet and distributed to schools, teachers, and parents worldwide. It took Chrissy 4 years to learn how to animate and set up the studio, and in 2017, she released the first animation in English. The videos were so well received that she had several requests to produce them in various languages. To date, the program has been translated in 16 languages, and animations have been viewed nearly 500,000 times in YouTube. This is not a true reflection as to how many children are watching the videos, as Chrissy sends many schools, NGOs, and foundations all the videos to download due to many areas that are not having suitable internet. This program is free to everyone, all translations and languages, voices that have been done by volunteers. There is no funding, and everything that has been achieved has been through the kindness and goodwill of caring people who have and want to make a difference. And on top of that, Miss Chrissy Sykes is also a GGA, or Global Goodwill Ambassador. She is a member of the UN. She does some amazing work for children all across not only our nation, but also all across globally. And we thank you for being here, Miss Chrissy Sykes.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way from the UK.
Yeah.
I think that we should definitely start off with a couple of questions. And we are talking about, like I said, a very delicate and a subject that really affects not only our nation, but also affects us such globally. And so by this effect, how can we summarize child abuse and neglect, not only in the U.S., but also on a global scale? How can we really summarize it, and what is a good scale on that? How can we summarize that child abuse for you ladies?
Do you want to go, Linda?
Lisa, sure.
Lisa. Sorry.
First, no, that's my sister's name, who I actually lost to domestic violence. So I would say, summarizing it as this: education. Individuals need to be educated. We need to have education on domestic violence in our schools, in our churches, in our homes. But education, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I agree. The only way we are going to get over this subject and how many people are being abused every single day. The WHO worldwide say that over 1 billion children are abused every year. So that is literally 50% of all our children in the whole world. Now, if that many children were ill, people would be jumping around doing something tomorrow, raising all sorts of funding. But because it's abuse, it seems to get neglected, which is just amazing to me, because as these children grow up, they end up with all sorts of problems, with physical problems, mental problems, and we end up with almost a sick society because we're not dealing with it at the root.
Yeah. So
I totally agree with Lisa. Education on this subject. And the whole idea with my program is, because it's done with fun little music songs, it makes it more approachable. And that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the subject into the homes, families, into the schools, where it is an acceptable subject, a positive, empowering subject, rather than, ooh, we're going to talk about child abuse,
Correct.
Right.
Don't want to do that. So yes, education, 100%.
Yeah.
So in saying education, which both of you all said, which is key, what do you think we can do as far as educating the parents more so? I mean, of course, the children need to be made aware, because the parents are not with the children at all times, and things happen. And sometimes if the children do not know, because the parents are uneducated, what can we do to help the parents have a better understanding of child abuse, or what things to look for concerning child abuse?
You go ahead, Chrissy.
Okay. I was just going to say, well, my program, like I said, is free to everybody. That's what I wanted to do, because I want to make sure that every single parent, whether you're rich or poor, whatever, you can access this program. So I have a little course. It's only a half an hour course that you can take, and it gives you all the facts about child abuse, what to look for, how to react if a child discloses some child abuse to you. We need to get that over to the parents, but then we need them to sit down with the kids and start the conversation.
Exactly.
That is where we need to go. Is okay, so parents need to understand what child abuse is and how damaging it is to children, which I don't think a lot of parents do understand. And then open the lines of communication. And if we don't start communicating about the subject, we are never going to get anywhere.
Correct. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I would say that we must start off with educating adults and children both in the tags of domestic violence. When you think of domestic violence, most folk only think of it being domestic violence when it's taking place in a sexual or physical sense. And not knowing that there are 3 other tags to domestic violence. The one that starts off that's very simple is verbal. So we need to make sure that adults and children are educated, knowing that domestic violence starts off with verbal abuse, just the way we approach someone, the way we talk to someone, name calling, teasing, bullying. Also, I think it's important for us to start educating kids at a younger age, and that way they will grow up as an adult, into adults understanding domestic violence. Oftentimes folk become abusers and or victims because it starts within their household. So if you are raising a child and you are verbally abusing them, you're teaching them one or two things or both. You're teaching them that it's normal. You're teaching them that it's okay. Or and so that cycle just it continues. It just doesn't stop until someone stops it, and then you'll have someone that'll come along and they'll grow up older, until older children, such as teens, young adults, older adults, thinking that it's okay, and it really isn't. So we have to start off way before people become adults. We have to start educating as children on all of the tags, because before it becomes even sexual or physical, it's verbal and emotional. So we need to start educating early. For me, I work in the school system sometimes, just sharing my story, and we're not allowed to go into schools unless it's high schools. By then, I'm sorry, it's too late. You need to reach them at a very early age, maybe as young as 5 or younger in some instances.
Correct. And I agree with you. Psychology Today, which I love reading the APAs. I love reading Psychology Today. I'm really deep into trying to read anything that has to do with psychology because of the therapy. But they said that really you need to catch it within the first 72 hours, and how you were talking about, it's not just all physical. It is sometimes emotional, it is verbal. And if we look at the signs of emotional abuse, it is, I took your course, My Body is My Body. Which is an amazing course, which gives you a detailed extension of what emotional abuse is, what verbal abuse is. And if we really go into detail about that, it is extreme behaviors, that can change very sudden, from self-confidence and headaches or stomach aches without medical cause, abnormal fear, increased nightmares. They even attempt to run away. Me and my husband ourselves, we knew a young boy who ran away. And this could be even as early as 7 or 8 years old, 9 years old. And it's correct what you said, that some children can potentially manifest those individual things at a very early age. Same thing goes with emotional neglect. They have failure to even gain weight because they are emotionally neglected. Specifically infants that desperately want affection, and their behavior can be noticeable. Their vicarious appetite, or they steal food because they don't have it at home, or they're neglected to have food at home. And these are all things that doctors can even notice on, and a lot of parents don't take them to hospitals because they know a doctor will notice this immediately. They will acknowledge it. So a lot of them will be medically neglected. Right. And so,
but a lot of times when things like that happen, where a child may be hungry, they're not getting enough to eat at home, and at school they're asking for a second lunch or something like that. Yeah. This is where the teachers come in. Yeah. If the teachers are educated, the teachers will realize, why is this child coming to school every day hungry? Yes. Asking for, a second lunch or another meal and things like that. They are supposed to be trained to be able to recognize abuse as well and report it. They have a duty, as a matter of fact, to report it as teachers. Yeah. But a lot of times, teachers, parents don't want to acknowledge what it is for what it is. Yes. You see the abuse is there, and a lot of people will just say, well, my child is just acting out. They're not just acting out. When kids act out, it's because of something that has happened. So we have to be more aware and pay attention to how they're acting. Why are they acting like this? Yeah. What's causing them to act like this? Yeah. So the more we know, the more teachers know, then we can be more aware to point out and say, this doesn't look right. This seems like something I learned that, they falls under the category of abuse. I need to maybe report it to the counselor. The counselor will have a conversation with the parent and start there, as opposed to just letting it go and not saying anything, or just say he or she is just acting out. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a behavior. I think maybe and I don't know, ladies, maybe you can address that, because I know Chrissy, you and I even had a conversation, and I think your program is so imperative because we don't have a program that's set in motion like that. We don't. I mean, a lot of places don't.
It's so important as well to get the kids talking at school, because a lot of times they can't talk at home. If it's an abusive home, they can't say anything. So the teachers or the counselors or somebody out of the home needs to be talking to the children. And I've worked, when I lived in America and I was in Nashville, I worked a lot with young kids in the projects with the is it Home Start? No,
Head Start.
Home Start here.
Head Start.
Huh?
Head Start. Yes.
Head Start. I worked a lot with Head Start, and the kids understand the program at 3, 4. It's fine. You can start. Okay, you don't have to go into quite as much depth as you would maybe with a child that's 9, but you can still say, if somebody's hurting you, if somebody is doing anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, if somebody's touching your private parts, you can give them really good basic facts that, as Lisa was saying, that they can grow up with. So that when they do get to teenagers, they've already got that body empowerment, and they, this is my body. You can't do that. You can't talk to me like that. Yes. You can't bully me like that. And we need to get hold of these kids at a young age and give them good grounding so that they grow up with that positive. I was sexually abused when I was a child, and I didn't tell anybody, and I did grow up with that. I'm not as good as everybody else, and I'm not worth it, and I'll just take anything that comes my way because I don't deserve. And I just do not want to see other children growing up like that, because it took me a long time to get to the point where I can go, yes, I am worth it. I'm cool.
You are.
I'm
You
good.
are
Yes,
worth
you
it.
are.
You are worth
And
it.
I deserve, but it took a long time, and it took a lot of ups and downs. And I really believe in my heart, which is why I'm so passionate about doing this, is that if we get to kids young enough and we open those lines of communication with schools, with parents, but it's got to be done. It's got to come out of the shadows, this abuse stuff. I know it's very close to many of us.
Yeah.
It's either us or somebody close to us in our families, which makes it hard. It makes it a hard thing to talk about because it's around us all. But we have to realize that if we don't address it and we don't start talking about it positively, like, we can do something about it. Our children do not need to grow up being abused, battered, bullied, whatever, because we can offer solutions. And as I say, we don't end up with a lot of people with mental abuse or on drugs or all the other things that our kids are growing up with because of their abuse.
And it's hard because a lot of children witness a lot of this, even witnessing domestic violence and witnessing that, because sometimes they'll get the preference, one child will become abused and the other child might be the preferred child, and there's still abuse within that. And that hearing violence or feeling violence or, being used within violence, like often within control or manipulation of the victim, or participating. Sometimes they'll even make a child participate in violence by coercion or force. I know, like I said, I was within the training one time, and they were utilizing a child to force the abuse and to force that one child to hit another child. And that's still considered abuse if you're training one child to hit another child. And to intervening within that fact, or being in the line of fire, or dealing in the aftermath of that child, because then you still have to deal with that poor child is still being traumatized. You're dealing with
at the same time, the one child that they're pitting against the other does not understand that what they're doing is wrong. And that's part of the problem, because the parents are putting the children in the middle,
right?
And one kid may understand this is not right. Why is mommy or daddy or Timmy always picking on me? Not even realizing what's going on. But that's why it's important for the kids to be aware. And people think children as young as 4 or 5 don't understand a lot of things, but I beg to differ, because they do. We don't give them credit for what they understand, and that's the problem. Yeah. We have to realize they have a mind just like we do. Yeah. It may not be on the same level we're on, but they have an understanding of what's going on. When your child hears the father beating mommy, or say when daddy comes home and he hears the floor creak, he know mommy's going to get it. They know what's going on. They may not verbalize anything, but their understanding of what's going on is there. So we have to make the kids aware. Right is right, wrong is wrong. We teach our children, you don't go to school picking on nobody, but if somebody puts your hands on you, you defend yourself. So they understand they don't go and start a fight, but if somebody does something to them, you stand up for yourself. The same way we have to make them understand, even your brother, sister, or your parents, they're not just supposed to beat you for no reason, or because you wet yourself and you're still learning how to be potty trained. They have to be made aware of where to draw the line.
Yeah.
They have to be made aware.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. But kids are unfortunately taught that, It goes back to a learned behavior.
Yes.
So although kids have natural instincts, just like an adult, of what's right and what's wrong, they know that at a very early age. Mm-hmm. They're born with natural instincts, just like everyone else. But if you're in an environment where when you're being taught that is right, or you're in an environment when you're in an abusive household, whether it be mom or dad or both, you have to beat up your sibling or you're not going to get fed. What you're doing is you're breaking down their fight or flight instinct.
Yes.
And there is so they have to be taught, and their brains have to be transformed. So we just can't teach them that that's right or wrong. So they have to go through maybe years of retransforming the brain. They, if they're not getting the proper therapy that they need to retransform the brain, because they automatically, like I said, know what's right from wrong, but it's a matter of being retraining. And when you think about them taking funding out of the school systems, or households where they cannot afford where they can't afford insurance, let alone pay for a therapist, because that would take maybe mom or dad, aunt or uncle or whomever it is needing therapy as well. Or they're in school systems where they're even being bullied or abused by teachers and peers and counselors. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I'm like Chrissy, I'm a survivor of rape. I was raped at the age of 13, and the behavior just escalated from there. I wasn't good enough. I participated in promiscuous, a promiscuous lifestyle, which abuse can lead to sex trafficking. It can prostitution, a number of things that I'm not good enough. All of those things tie in. I've seen it firsthand. So first, a person has to be taught that this is not right, this is wrong. But what do you do when you're when you're in a household or in a system where you're being taught just the opposite? Because what you're doing is you're teaching them that this is okay. For instance, my daughter was being bullied when she was in 5th grade by an 11-year-old boy. And the behavior started off as verbal. He would tell her she was ugly, she needed glasses, she needed braces. And my daughter was actually believing everything that this little boy said to her. Oh, I'm ugly, I need glasses. And I'm like, where is this coming from? But I instantly, because I was a victim, knew that something was wrong. She wasn't getting it from home. So when I started just talking to her about where is this coming from, it was actually coming from a little boy at school. She had mentioned it to the teachers and to the counselors. And what my daughter was told at 11 years old by a teacher and by a principal and by school counselors, even the psychiatrist at school, is that, oh, that's normal. You're just growing up. You're going through changes. And I'm like, no, this isn't normal. And before you know it, I had a daughter who had been physically assaulted by an 11-year-old. And then the behavior escalated to one day he just decided he was going to beat her up and break her arm. And even after then, my daughter was forced to sit in a classroom with this young boy who had did all of this to her, until it turned into the monster that had been growing inside of me from a very early age being exposed. That was a monster that I controlled for many years. And one day I lost control. The monster had total control over me. But through that and through that trauma, my daughter was in turn taught by me that this is not normal, and you don't have to go through this, and you don't have to take this. And we later on found out or discovered that the little boy who had been attacking my daughter and bullying others and was allowed to get away with it even through a school system, is that he was being brutally sodomized at home. He was being brutally raped at home. He was being brutally beat at home, and no one was doing anything. And the school knew it, including them. They did nothing because he was a very smart kid who was a straight A student, and he got high test scores, and they needed him specifically for that reason. So they ignored everything that he was going through because they needed him for one purpose and one purpose only.
And
they failed him.
Yeah, they
and
needed
And his behavior continued to escalate until he was unfortunately murdered this year. A system failed him.
And see,
The
that's
school system failed him. The judicial system failed him.
But that's what I'm saying. When you said they told your daughter it was normal, that right there said they didn't have the formal training or education to understand, to be able to recognize what was going on. Did she even went further in what she had to endure?
Yeah.
With you, her mom teach her, what if you didn't know?
Correct.
What if you hadn't experienced it? You may not have known what to teach her, to tell her, no, baby, this is not correct. This is not normal. See, that's where the problem comes in. The educators need to be educated.
Absolutely.
The educators need to be educated so they can point out things, and then for them to know what this little boy was going through at home and do nothing. See, they should have been able to reach out to help him. Just like I said earlier, when someone's behavior is acting out, it's because of something. Why is he acting like that? Why is he bullying people? Why is he doing this? Because what he was dealing with at home.
Yeah.
See, we have to learn to make the connections.
Yes.
Yeah. I was talking to a group of children the other day, and this very subject came up, that because they said, what do we do when we get bullied? And I said, well, you need to tell people, and you need to do something about it. And they said, but we do tell the teachers, and they don't do anything about it.
Absolutely.
Then you tell
someone
someone
else. So I did explain
else.
to them, you have to realize that the people who are bullying you usually are people that are having problems at home or somewhere, and they're being abused or bullied themselves, which is why they're taking it out on you.
Exactly.
But I said that doesn't help you deal with the program. But it does show me that our teachers are very ill equipped to deal with this.
Agreed.
Yes.
Because
Agreed.
they just kind of shove it under go and sit down, it's all right, fine, it's not a problem. And that's what this teacher told these kids, just don't worry about it, or it's just what kids do, or whatever, and it's very traumatizing for children.
It is, but it doesn't become a problem until you have an angry parent come up to school with a baseball bat threatening people or calling the police, and then that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Lisa, you want to share with us what you had to do for your daughter?
Yeah.
What I had to do for my daughter, no parent should have to go through, but I kid you not. I learned after that incident that it happens to more parents than we know and realize. It's just not reported and you don't see it. Unfortunately, even when we talk about educators being educated in the subject, we need to also even look farther than that when it comes to doctors and first responders, police officers. I mean, it had gotten to the point with my daughter that even when I went to the police station to file a complaint against this young man, I was told that I couldn't do so because of No Child Left Behind laws and other laws, and you can't do it because they're minors. Then what am I supposed to do? Even when I went through the school system and I was working with the superintendent of the schools, they told me, no, there's nothing we can do. And I tell you, just by the grace of God, the superintendent that I was working with, his wife just so happened to be a child psychiatrist. And she said to him, her daughter is not safe, because after they split the children up, he had other children bullying my daughter. And so she had became his victim. And his wife had to explain to him, the superintendent's wife is it's not going to stop. Even after he broke her arm, it is not going to stop. And we had to have her transferred to another school for her own safety.
Yes. And that's right.
You know, and along with education, some laws have to be changed. There have to be some changes in laws. I mean, if a child is being bullied to a certain extent, there should be no reason why a child should not be able to file a complaint, file or stay away order, or you know, anything
or start holding the parents responsible.
Necessary, absolutely.
You know, unfortunately, the judicial system is not protecting children, and the reason why that is because a protective order and a no trespassing ordinance does not protect children under the age of 18. Yeah. It is only for children. It's only for ages 18 and up. And so if a child is affecting another child in a high school, a middle school, whatever the case may be, if you look at the small little clause that's on a protective order, it only says 18 and older. And it also states that even if it's an 18-year-old, you have to have parental consent.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, if you want your child to be protected in the school system and you want a protective order, unfortunately, you won't get one.
Nope.
If you're in a college and your child has just been raped by another student, alumni, they are not allowed, and she's 16 or he is 16, they cannot get a protective order or a no trespassing ordinance. It won't happen. You know, and unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but we do have a law that was established as the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act which is called CAFTA, and it's supposed to be protecting us against child abuse and investigation agencies, even referrals. That was a legislative landmark here. But if that was a landmark and it is an act, it should go even further to not only protect our children against any type of abuse, but it should also implement over the age of, per se, 15, 16, 17, because we are seeing it now that there are implications within the household that really should protect children. And if there is an issue, there should be a separation. You know, have them in separate classrooms. Have someone, you know, the child be suspended, expelled, put in a different location. But the child who's abused or the child who has the issue should not go through this process, you know, because now what happens is that we don't have any protection for the child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Along with, I agree wholeheartedly, but I would also say, we just can't, you know, expel, suspend. Because that really, to me as a parent and a victim, it doesn't get to the root of the issue. That's just like you putting someone in jail for an act that they've committed. If you're not getting them the proper help that they need and you just throw them in a jail cell, then they're prone to come out and doing the same thing again. You have to really get to the root of the issue.
But within that process of them being expelled, they need to have mental health or anger management. So by starting off the process is to be able for them to start off getting some kind of assistance. So that's how we start the process for them to say there's a problem at home. DSS gets involved. We start going ahead and saying they need some sort of psychological help or something. Gets someone involved in the home. It's for us to be able to say, let's jump in the home and find out what happened, that this child is either being victimized or there's something going on within the involvement of neglect because there is something deeper in the home. You know,
I agree,
but it has to be.
But you have to have the parent or guardian participation. And sadly, oftentimes you don't get that.
Exactly. Yeah. But it should start being something in the laws where it's ordered, where it's court ordered.
Yes.
Because half the time, if you tell the parent, well, you need to get Timmy some help, to figure out why he's abusing, why he's acting out, why he's bullying. they're not going to do it on their own. It needs to be ordered so that they get it done, or the parent should face some consequence of it, because if we can't go after the child who's beating up my child or breaking my child's arm without me going to jail, then it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem. We need to fix that. It needs to be something where the parents are held accountable.
And, and not for nothing, I know that we were discussing it before we got on the air. Well, we've seen the rate of victimization. I think we've all were talking about, certain statistics that people probably don't know about, which, the rate of victimization and the rate of things that have going on, especially right now with COVID-19, has increased. I've wrote down a couple of numbers that 10.3% per 1,000 children. I think you guys had different numbers, but I think Ohio's probably a little bit lower. I mean, higher in their numbers. I think it's at about 13.2 per 1,000 children, and it said 2.5 per 100,000 here in Virginia, and 129 children per deaths, and 46 to abuse and neglect. I think, Chrissy, you have different numbers. You had something totally different in the UK.
I had. These are new figures from 2019. They said in the year March 2019, estimated approximately 8.5 million adults had experienced abuse before the age of 16.
Wow.
This is equivalent to 20.7% of the population.
Wow.
And this is emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and also witnessed domestic violence. So 20% is massive. And I think that's on the low side.
Yeah,
I do too, Percy. I absolutely agree.
And I think, Lisa, you had some numbers
that's
too.
on the low side. I think we all know that that's on the low side.
Yes.
I think we could double that easily.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, and I think, Lisa, you had some numbers too. I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Cases being reported.
Yeah. Because most of it's not reported.
No,
a lot of it's
we really
not
have
reported.
no idea what extent
it's probably 2 or 3 times as much as what is reported.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's probably.
Yeah. And I think, Lisa, you said you had a couple of numbers too, which for the referrals and victimizations, you said also, because I know that you're in DC area, but you also have worldwide.
So I had worldwide, and mine is just a tad lower than Chrissy's. I had 275 million children worldwide are exposed to domestic violence within the household, and 1 in 15 children are eyewitnesses. Or that's about 90% of children are eyewitnesses. To domestic violence, and 1 in 4, actually 20, I think Chrissy said 20%, and I saw just recently here where it was raised to 22% of children. So that's about 1.5 million kids or somewhere around in there, I believe.
Yes.
But
too many.
Yes.
But people think just because the kids are witnessing it and they're not actually being abused, that it's not affecting them. Yeah. That's not true, because it is affecting them.
Yes.
I mean, it affects them as young as infants in the crib age. Can be in the room when a parent, husband and wife, mother and father are arguing, fighting. It will affect that child, and that's what people have to realize.
Yeah.
Just because you send them in their room and shut the door, they know what's going on, and it is affecting them.
Yes.
And if they don't get help, they're either going to be abused or they're going to be abusers, one or the other.
Yep.
Just because it's not happening to them doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect on them.
Yeah.
Because it does.
Well, it is.
It does.
It does.
It is.
It does.
But when you think of a fetus, the developmental stage starts off in the womb, right?
Correct.
So and I know Chrissy can speak to this better than I can. So for instance, when that child is born, you may have a baby that has an escalator or intense increase of whining and crying, diarrhea,
Tremors.
Things of that nature. And like you said, developmental issues, whether that be, brain or, physical. So I would say that it starts off it starts off in the womb.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, up to the age of 7, the neurons are developing in a child's brain,
Right.
and if they are in an abusive household, or are being sexually abused, whatever, those neurons do not grow properly and do not attach and fire properly. So that child does not, and that's what I always tell parents, that child does not become what it could be.
Correct.
Yes.
We want our children to grow up and become the best they can.
Yes.
But if we put them in that sort of
Zone.
abusive home, or we don't do something about the abuse, which is the other thing, is the people that know about the abuse that's happening and turn a blind eye to it because they don't want to offend someone in the family, or they don't want to, cause a problem in the family. They've got to realize that they have got to cause that problem.
Exactly.
They have got to say something.
That's right.
And they've got to stand up for their kids, because those kids are going to grow up with massive problems if they don't.
Yep.
I agree. I say this all the time, and this is something that I had to be taught and learn just through therapy and transforming those neurons, the brain, is people don't understand that you don't grow past your trauma. So, for instance, I'm a 52-year-old female. But if I haven't had help for trauma I had, I may be a 52-year-old, but my brain has not developed past a 7-year-old with trauma.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the brain and the neurons just don't,
Connect.
they just
It's not
don't
connected.
No, not there. Right.
So that's where I say, your brain has to be transformed, or I can be a 70-something-year-old woman with like a 9 or 10-year-old brain, because it does not develop properly past the trauma that it has been through. So when you think about people who've been through multiple traumas, I mean, a number of things. So you have to take that into account, and that's where I say therapy and retraining that brain. Education, therapy, retraining that brain is very important. For me, even when I was dealing with the developmental stage, when I went back and I did the numbers, I had about 33 plus years of trauma that I had to, work my way through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
But this is why we have to get to the kids early.
Yes.
We have to get to the parents.
Yes.
And to the kids.
Yes.
There's no point teaching our kids to go and tell somebody and then nobody's listening. That's just as detrimental.
Yes.
But if we can stop that, and the PTSD that the kids will suffer from their traumas and things like that, it would change things dramatically.
It does. And it really does, because it's they say that the increase of neural connection between the toxicity stress derails, and it increases the levels for the kids to really grow their patterns of behavior, to learn. And the brain adapts by reinforcing the needs for skills, their hypervigilance, their emotional detachments, their impulsivities. And so a kid's way of thinking is really about reactiveness. It's about the way that they're able to interact between their adults and between other children. And if they're in a key behavior where their incentives to motivate by mood regulations, especially if they're in a hypervigilance, and if they're sitting there going, well, I'm in a fight or flight, and they're hypersensitive all the time, their behavior is motivated by the way that their environment is speculated or defined by the way that they are perceived, especially if they're all the time hypervigilant or hypersensitive. And so traumatized children become more addicted to, especially as they grow older, they get more, addicted to that hypervigilancy. They want to have that sense of hypersensitivity. They go 39% of them go towards alcoholism. They say 34.1% go to cocaine, 66.2% go to heroin, 44.8% go to marijuana, and it's a clinical population of adolescents. It's about 70% of them do, only because they have been put in that flight or flight, and they are so hypervigilant that they are so traumatized as children, and they didn't have that ability to address the issues of abuse as a child. And like Christy says, we have to catch that early, so that they're able to address the issues early on. It's that fight or flight. And just like you said, Lisa, I had to work through something my whole life. I had trauma for years. It was that hypervigilance. You were just trying to fight or flight it for so long, and having to be able to say, how do I go through my trauma? How do I work through this trauma? You didn't even know it.
But at the same time,
a lot of us don't even know that we've been traumatized.
Right.
No.
But at the
It's
same,
it's natural, isn't it?
Right.
If the abusive situation is how a child's brought up,
Right.
they think that's how it's done.
Right.
Yes.
And that's why the cycle continues, because they
Yeah.
believe that that's how you treat kids. You
Sure.
bash them around and you
Sure.
shout at them and you belittle them
Yeah.
because that's how they were brought up.
Correct.
So
exactly. But if they're not given the chance to fully live out who they could be
Correct.
because of what they've been through,
Yeah.
that's a big problem.
Yeah.
The children
Yes.
should be all that they can be, and a parent should be able to help that child to do so.
I agree.
But if the parent, if I'm not educated enough to help my children be whoever or whatever they want to be, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And that's why it has to start with the parent, connecting with the child, connecting with the educator, so we all can work together.
Yeah.
That's why you have kids in school, and the whole school year, you don't hear from the school, and then in June, they're calling you saying, oh, well, Garrett is not going to graduate because he failed 4 classes. Well, how come I'm just hearing from you now instead of I didn't hear from you throughout the time where he was failing these classes?
Yeah.
We have to learn to communicate,
Hey.
but you have to be educated to know, so that we can help our children grow up and use their full minds to do what they're supposed to do, not just think they're supposed to live in a life of violence and abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, that starts off too when you're getting into a relationship with an individual, and you want to find out as much as you can about that individual. How were they raised? How were they brought up? How were their parents raised? How were their parents brought up? Because you may be an individual who has not dealt with trauma, abuse, or that sort of thing, but you get involved with someone who has. And it goes back to what Cynthia's saying, that it's like your unconscious addiction. I mean, it's normal for you.
Yes.
So you don't understand.
Yeah,
it.
it's that
You don't
hypervigilance.
understand. So
understand
that's why
that.
it is too that it's important. I mean, and gosh, these are things that I definitely didn't learn growing up. It didn't know until maybe.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yes,
years
you're not.
ago, but,
Yeah, we got you.
You know, we have to be taught all of these things are just so important, and it plays. It ties in. It ties into so much. You know, when you even before you even think about having children, so
Yeah.
it even goes prior to any of the other stuff. Because you have people getting into relationships out of pain where, I have pain, you have pain. So
let's put our pain together.
Yeah.
let's put our pain together.
Yes.
We'll just call it love.
Right.
Yes.
Or, in the city here in Washington, D.C., and it's in other states as well, where you have so many killings taking place and murders taking place. I mean, even in,
Daily.
middle school
Daily.
up until now. But you have people who are dealing with the, trauma. So what they do, they act out, or that's what they're seeing in the household. They say it's normal. Or, I mean, for me, I thought an unhealthy relationship was love. I wasn't taught any differently.
Yeah.
No.
Before because I don't want to pass by our time, but before we go, I kind of wanted to really quickly. I know that Chrissy, I know that you're part of the SDGs initiatives. I know that we are part of 17 now. We were just talking about them, and if we could just go by which is part of the United Nations, really quickly, just so that people will know what those mean, on what particularly you're dealing with, to deal with, helping children with United Nations globally on a global scale, and we could just go through them really fast, that people will know.
Okay, I'll read them out quickly. The Sustainable Development Goals are to we're trying to get them done by 2030, which is to make a total difference for the world, really, in all sorts of things. So the My Body is My Body program covers 4A, which is building education facilities for a child, to give them a non-violent and inclusive learning environment. Okay, so we're trying to, it's through education. Awesome. 5.2 is eliminate all forms of violence against women and children in public and in private spheres, including trafficking, which is a big thing, as we know at the moment. And 16.2 is our main one, which is end abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence against and torture against children, and sexual and other types of exploitation. So it's all those three are all to do with protecting children against abuse, sexual abuse, and violence against women as well.
That's exciting, because we really want to work with, I know that Global Goodwill Ambassadors are very big on making sure that we work with the United Nations. And you're such an imperative part of that. I know that you're the vice president of the, I think, Children's Welfare. Children's Welfare, and it's so important that we continue to do work in pairs and, corporations. But we also want to make sure that your voice for My Body is My Body, and people understand that this program is on YouTube, and you guys can get it on there. So and the website has got lesson plans for teachers and parents. It's got little children's workbooks they can download and go through with their kids. And these are some of the characters behind me. It's all done in fun. It's all positive. So, and I've done this program with people all over the world, different religions, different people, some very conservative people, who I've never found anyone that's been offended by it. No, it's beautiful. So it's a really good starting point for people to start the conversation. And I think that's my message to everyone, is start the conversation about abuse. Empower your child and let them know what's wrong, that people aren't allowed to do these things to them, that they have a right to say no and tell. It's not rocket science. No. It's just talking about it and doing something about it. Yeah. And we need communities to get involved. Yes. We can't just rely on the odd parent here and there to do it. It's got to be the schools, the communities, the parents all together. Correct. Going, right, Yeah.
We're not going to allow this to happen anymore to our children.
Yeah.
We want them to grow up safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you guys should see the videos that she has from I don't know if is it Tanzania or Botswana? Is it Uganda?
Oh.
The kids that are from
Loads. I've
Yeah,
got
they're-
some from South Africa.
South
There's one
Africa.
South African school that the whole school did the song.
Yes.
There's about 400 kids.
Yes.
And it's brilliant.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant.
I watched it was a good video.
Yeah. No, I've got kids all over. We've got India, South Africa, Egypt, all sorts of places.
You will be
yeah,
moved.
It's,
You will be moved. Trust me, you will be moved. If you watch the videos of the kids just singing the little songs, you will be moved. Because these are songs that will inspire you to want to do this with your kids too. And this is what we want. We want to affect the nations and the global effect. And so this is an inspiring thing, you know. And Lisa, I know that are you working currently on a new book?
I am working currently on a new book. I am.
I was gonna throw you under the bus there.
She was.
brilliant.
It's okay. Yes, I am. I'm working on a new book. Just allowing God to work through me and use me. And this one is just more about the other 3 books that I did work on were collaborations, which were just wonderful opportunities. And it was really something I wanted to do. And then God one day opened the door and I said, okay, Lord. But this one is just more so about the parent-daughter relationship and me growing up, as a victim into adulthood and the effects on raising a child.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. I hope that you will let us know the book soon, so that we can, let people know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
yes,
so
I
much.
would really appreciate that. I also wanted to thank our sponsors. You will, guys, will get the link soon. But I do want to thank, Dots Automotive and also Woodbridge Plumbing for helping us be here today, and also to thank our speakers.
Yes.
For being here, and also for MixStation, for mixstation.com. Please do not forget to always go on mixstation.com, www.mixstation.com. Not only just check out our shows, but also check out the other shows that are on there. They have some amazing shows, but we also want to make sure that, collaborate with us. If you are a business and you want some great advertisement, let us know. But again, thank you for being here today. You are blessed and highly favored. And like I always say, you guys are beautiful. You are lovely. I love you. And thank God that God loves you too. Thank you, ladies, for being
Lisa
here.
and Chrissy.
Thank you for
Bye,
inviting us.
Chrissy.
both.
Bye, Lisa. And bye, everybody on Facebook.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello?